Oh, I forgot to add myself to the stream. So, hey, welcome. Um, I think the light conditions it's not happening, but let me move myself a little bit. Okay, yeah, this light condition works better. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so I'm so glad to be finally here because, well, this stream was rescheduled due to a problem I had yesterday. Power went off all the block where I live. This happened before to me, but I had the chance to move to a place where I had like for sure power connection, right? But yesterday just could not. I'm so sorry about that. So I have to reschedule it, and we are now here, right? Perfect. We are ready to start, and let's start diving into what MCPs are. Remember, this is part one, and we will be having part two at what the time for that is. Give me a second. At 8, oh my god, I have 80 time will be 11 hours today. So we have time to digest it's going to be the stream right now, and then later the part two. We have a message from Flying Girl saying hello. That's great. And I'm so rude. I always forgot to introduce myself. I'm so sorry. My name is Alberto from the Mailing Hacking. I'm your Mailing Hacking coach in Mexico. Same as Jocelyn, for example. You probably heard about her. She's giving a lot of streams, and they are awesome as well. Actually, we have an upcoming stream from her, Voice Power Gen AI with Baby with part one and then part two also. And that will be at 5 and 9 hours respectively. This is all ET time. And we also have a mini bandwidth way, which is type racer, right? So stay tuned to the agenda because today is the last day at Global Hack Week. I'm pretty sure that you had the chance to watch very wonderful streams from all our coaches. Checking link, please. Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, actually, for reminding me for that. I always forgot the sharing. So here it is. You can check in and you can win your points with that. Thank you. Thank you so much for the reminder. So I think we're ready to start now. All the introduction has been done. And let me start sharing my screen. Perfect. So let's add this to the stage. Sorry, I usually like to have two monitors, but currently I don't have that. I wasn't prepared, but remember this was like, well, I mean, like, I I wasn't expecting to be doing this streaming here right now, but I have to reschedule it for yesterday's. The point is, let's start diving in. I going to be constantly switching back and go for the slides because I need to see your comments. Please, at any time, let me know if anything happens here, right? So, what are MCP agents part one? This is the slides. I'm your facilitator, Alberto Camarena, and this is present for Global Hack Week GenAI, right? Let's start with the agenda. What is MPC? Because um, these three letters are for multiple things, right? But under the context of generative AI, let's discuss what NPCs are, why it's important to have NPCs. We'll check the anatomy of one, message types, sessions, content manager, tool function calling, and then we are going to build with MCP, right? And finally, a Q&A session, and that will be all for today's part one. Then on part two, we will start exploring more the use of this tool. And if the agenda haven't give you any clue of what we are talking about, context protocol, model context protocol, it's a protocol used for structure communication with large language models. It brings consistency, traceability, and context awareness into the AI-driven conversation by standardizing. And I don't know why I don't have my bullet points here, but if we go to the slides content, we have the message formats, session management, metadata embeddings, and tool calling for augmentation. Let me check why I don't have that. Okay, yeah, I have my bullet points here. What happened? Uh, okay, that's so weird. Um, if I have to, I will regenerate all of this. Just I want to give a test. Okay, if I refresh. Okay, maybe because I am using. Okay, I'll switch all of the bullet points. Give me a second. Sorry about that. Actually, I wanted to try this, but this new format, it's not helping. And I'm give you big spoilers on the content, right? But this is to you for habit, so I will correct them really quick. Sorry. Okay, perfect. I think everything's fine, right? No comments here. So let's continue. It brings consistency, traceability, and content awareness into the AI-driven conversation by standardizing the message formats, the session management, metadata, embeddings, and the tool calling and augmentation. Um, Also, I forgot to mention, but remember, this is like part three of the whole series of content I've been doing this Global Hack Week for generative AI. The first part was understanding long language models and how to set up a local long language model for your computer. That was part two, part one, and part two. Then part two of the series was understanding retrieve augmentation generation, which is a commonly used technique nowadays for these long language models, right? So that's content that we built on top of the first. And the last part, the three part for, the third part for these is precisely understanding MCPs. And if this content does not give you an idea of what is happening, of what is it, the model context protocol, you can think of just a way to standardize how we communicate to AI. That's just it. Specifically for the language models and well how we manage things like this: the message, the session, the metadata, and the augmentation tools. Um, to make an example of it, it's like the API, right? So in web, you can think about the RESTful, right? It's how it's the protocol, well, a layer of protocol, how we interact with the two pieces of software. It's generating the API. Well, MPC, it's as an API as it is REST, right? So it's just the way how we standardize communication between two pieces of software, being the second piece or the first, the AI model, right? That's just it. In simple words, very understandable, I think. And if you want to get like in deep of what's happening here, I really recommend checking the release of Anthropic. Actually, Anthropic were the company that really introduced this model context protocol. They do this. They introduced the model context protocol. We can check this. This is a 3-minute read, so let's give it a try. It was released on November 25th from last year, so really, really new, actually. So today we're open sourcing the Model Context Protocol, a new standard for connecting AI assistants to the systems where the data lives, right? Again, in simple terms, just how we communicate the model with the data with these two pieces of software. Uh-huh. Including content repositories, business tools, and development environment. It's to help frontier models produce better, more relevant responses. As AI assistants gain mainstream adoption, the industry has invested heavily in model capabilities, achieving rapid advance in reasoning and quality. Yet, even the most sophisticated models are constrained by their isolation from data. I think this it's also very important to mention. When we were learning about the retrieve augmented generation, well, uh, one thing it's that technique, right? And we discussed in that series of sessions that the problem was specifically that once we train a model, the information get embedded in the neural network. So the values inside that has information about the learning, right? And we can predict and even generate new structures, since these are huge and immense parameter models. The shortest we discussed in the first part was 1 billion parameters, which is super huge. Well, uh, the problem still that even though with that, having the ability to access to new information required things like fine tune and retraining, right? And RACT helped with the context fitting for the LLM to be able to access fresh and always new data. Well, not always new, but the one you feed, right? And now it's your responsibility to keep it always new. Um, in the past, connecting these and make it possible to fit the rack systems to an LLM and having all connected, it was like a very artistic part because we have to, as developers, wire the entire system depending on the tools we're trying to use. So if you wanted to use a specific model, if you wanted to use a different architecture or different things or different pieces of software, it was a really, really messed up thing. Well, thanks to MCPs now, well, the model context protocol, there is a standard, and as engineers, well, yeah, as engineers, and in all the science and engineering standards, it's just what we really want because we can in exchange different pieces, and they will communicate exactly the same because we serve that as a standard. So imagine tomorrow you want to change the model, you can do it. You can change it for another one because it will expect the same output or and will give you the same output and expect the same input as the previous one. Let me check very quick if you have any questions this far. What is this sorcery? How do you create a PDF out of Markdown? Well, thanks for asking. I use MARP, actually, with little space for that. MARP, it's a great tool that you can use specifically for that. Generating presentations, it's a Markdown presentation ecosystem. I love Markdown, and I've just found it very useful to be able to generate slides out of Markdown files. I also have another tools for generating blogs from Markdown files, Gray Matter, for example. But hey, I just love everything, all the ecosystem that it's based around Markdown. Actually, in the open source week, we make contributions to the MARP CLI, and look at me, there I am. I'm a contributor for this old tool that I love. Actually, I think I didn't share this before with you, community of Demetly Hacking. We did it. We made it to the contributors because this was a contribution we made under the open source week. So well, yeah, check out MARP. And with that said, there's an extension from VS Code that actually can do it with buttons. But hey, I'm a geek, so I love to do it in the CLI. I have both, just to be fun, to have it in mind. I always share my repos with this slides file. So in the README, you can check that, hey, I'm using MARP. You can do it by yourself if you install the CLI or via MPX with the command I just ran, and that's it. I also mentioned the VS Code blogging, I think. Well, but yeah, this will be in the repo, so you can have it. I always share the PDF and the HTML files as well, not only the Markdown, so you don't have to compile it yourself. You can download just directly the PDF. But yeah, thanks for asking. Great, thanks. I definitely going to use it. Yeah, love that. So let's return here. As we were discussing, the ultimate reason of having this is to make our lives easier. And well, thanks the Anthropic thing, we can make it. We made it possible. So every new data source requires its own custom implementation. Yeah, this was what I was talking about, making truly content system difficult to scale. Model Context Protocol addresses this challenge. It provides an universal open standard for connecting AI systems with the data source, replacing fragmented interactions with a single protocol. The result is a simpler and more reliable way to give AI system access to the data they need. The Model Context Protocol, it's an open standard that enables developers to build secure two-way connections between their data sources and AR-powered tools. The architect is straightforward. Developers can either expose their data through MCP servers or build AI applications, that will be the MCP clients, that connect to these servers. And this is really important. Give it a space in your head. These two concepts, MCP servers and MCP clients. We're going to check a little bit more about them in a second. Right? Let's keep with the reading. To connect to the today we are introducing three major components of the Model Context Protocol: the Model Connect Protocol, the specification from the SDK, the local MCP server support from Clouddesk apps, and an open source repository for MCP servers. So let's open these three. The servers one, this is the one I was mentioning that's very important to have in mind. Actually, we're going to use this later. And check out the references. And, well, we'll take a moment for this. The actual protocol, which is the one we opened from here, the specification and SDK, and the cloud, and the cloud desktop apps support, right? So Cloud.5.net is a depth quickly building MCP servers implementation to make it easier for organizations and individuals to rapidly connect their most important datasets with a range of AI-powered tools. To help developers start exploring, we sharing pre-built MCP servers for popular enterprise systems like Google Drive, Slack, GitHub, Git, Postgres, and even Puppeteer. So early adopters like Block and Apollo have integrated MCP into their systems, and while development tools companies include Set, Replit, Qdium, Sourcegraph, and are working with MCP to enhance their platforms, enable AI engines to better retrieve relevant information for further understanding the context around the code task and produce more nuanced and functional code with fewer attempts. At Block, open source is more than a development model. It's the foundation of our work and community and commitment, to creating technology that drives meaningful changes and serves as public good for all. I do agree. Actually, it's multiples here for open source. Now we mentioned, for example, the previous open source week from the global hack week and these open protocol. Right now, where I live, at least, I'm not really sure if that's a global thing. But right now, there are like meetings from the government talking about open source and how we can implement it as a standard for more governmental use cases, right? And talking about transparency and talking about a lot of things. And I just found that really, really interesting. Remember, I live in Mexico, so I just think that's how to say it, too advanced. So I'm so glad my government is doing things like that. I'm not really that informed about it, but I just saw a post in LinkedIn about a friend that actually is inside that. So I'll keep you tuned about the results of that. So they talk a little bit more about open source and the open protocol and everything that why this is important. So let's skip to the getting started part. Developers can start building and testing MCP connectors today from November from the past year. All cloud AI plans support connecting with MCP servers to the cloud desktop app, and Cloud Works for customers can begin Cloud for Works customers can begin testing MCP servers locally, connecting cloud to internal systems and datasets. We will soon provide desktop toolkits for deploying remote production MCP servers that can serve you entirely cloud for organization, and then to start building instant pre-build MCP servers, blah blah blah. Follow the quick start guide, contribute to the open source repositories and connectors, and they talk more about the open source community and why this is important. And I do agree a lot. So let's return then. What was that? Okay, any question this far? No. Um, we can close this because we're not going to use cloud. We can keep this open and also this one from the servers. Let's then pause to, oh, what's happening? I fixed that, didn't I? Oh, I think I didn't refresh. Yeah, I just needed to refresh. Sorry. Uh, okay, I think we pretty much covered these, but it's really important, again, to have that in mind. Even the most sophisticated models are constrained by their isolation from the data typed behind information silos and legacy systems. This is our topic on why the context integration matter. So, again, the MCPs. I am going to start saying MCPs because saying modern context protocol is just being too much right now. It's too large. We understand why people make the abbreviations, right? So it gave us composable message context, user session metadata, better memory management, and the tool call capabilities. And I think this is the one you can keep for everything. Um, Let's open this Hugging Have's blog by Gesine Schulha, which I found really, really important in the matter. Actually, this was one of the inspirations and where I learned a lot for the session. And it says why it's NCPs and why is everyone suddenly talking about it. Um, it explains a little bit more about what we just discussed. And one thing it's mentioned here, it's that it was announced on November 25. The release post was on March 17. So it says, why suddenly? Why it takes so much and takes so long to people to start implementing this? Um, I don't know. I will say it wasn't that much. If we take a look at this graph, yes, of course, it's just at the end, which is this red line here, model context protocol slash servers. But, I mean, for example, the release of the paper of retrieve augmented generation was on, if I remember well, around, well, I cannot remember exactly the month, but it was on 2020. So 5 years from now, and if you put that 5 years in this graphic, there's a huge, huge time amount. So we are practically making this protocol in less than November, October, 7 months, less than, well, around half year, which I just think it's really quick. But hey, again, it depends on the perspective. So the first part is why it's MCP making waves now. The integration problem solver, uh, the thing that we talked about, but also the community adoption. I mean, right now I think about this, and I don't know if the intention of the author was saying that was like so much time between the release and the implementation, or just saying what I am pointing out, which is we made it really quick. Right now, I'm not sure about that. But yeah, the community adoption, the not only from the individual communities but from the companies, it's what make this standard work. De facto standard momentum, unlike yet another proprietary SDK or one-off framework, MCP is open and model agnostic, which is this very important. It's backed by major AI players, yeah, like cloud, like GPT, like open source LLMs like Llama and DeepSeek and many others, um, which is very important. They can use all MCP because it's a standard, and any developer or company that create an integration without that, it's able to be benefit by the model, and vice versa, the model by the tool, right? Like by the server. So it also has a rapid evolution, and people it's being educated a lot on the matter. We are learning a lot right now. We discuss because this is funny. Um, AI has a boom, right? AI had a boom like 5 years ago, and from 5 years ago to now, we are like in a big wave of artificial intelligence discoveries, development, and so on. And from these 5 years to now, well, I'm not sure about the 5 years. Maybe, well, yeah, let's say 5 years. From now, we have been educating ourselves a lot. In the mainly hacking, we had the AI/ML week, which is just saying in general artificial intelligence and machine learning, but deep more inside that in another big circle of that Venn diagram, we have the generative AI. And it has a specific week now because we see the importance of being prepared for this, because as consumers we will all get benefit, right? But as developers, as hackers, as creators, we need to understand the whole principles for this. This is why I think this blog it's so good and accurate. So let's start breaking more the lines on how the model context protocol work. You know, um, MCP lays out clear rules for how AI can find and connect to the external tools, whether it's querying either a database or running comments. This lets the model go beyond training data and make it more flexible and aware of the world around. And then we can start checking. For example, the protocol internally uses another layer, which is JSON RPC 2.0 messages to establish communication between the host, client, and the server. Right, the host, it's the long language model application that initiates the connection. The client are the connectors with the host application. You can think about this of the tools, the agents, and the servers. It's the service that provides all the capabilities, right? So MCP takes the inspiration from language server protocol, which standardizes how to add and support for programming language across a whole system of development tools. In a similar way, MCP standardizes how to integrate additional context to tools into the ecosystems of AI applications. So we have the MCP client, the MCP server, and again, the information that it invokes, it queries, it interpolates, and the MCP server exposes the tool, the results, and the prompts. The tools could be functions invoked by the model. Resources could be the data it extracts, for example, files, databases, or even other API responses. And the prompts are the predefined templates for the AI interactions, right? So we have a comment, for example, here the prompt, it's the user control, the result, it's application control, and the tools, it's the model control, right? So this image was released by Anthropic. So let's going down. One striking feature is that MCPs dynamically discover AI agents automatically detect available MCP servers and their capabilities without hard code integration. For example, if you sign up to a new MCP, let's think about it for a CRM, agents can immediately recognize and use it via standardized API, offering flexibility traditional approaches can match. Let me quickly check if you have any questions this far. Okay, perfect. You don't. So let's continue. The best place to start with this it's the official documentation, which we are going to check in a second. So Anthropic open source this, so we can view fully what's happening there. No need to try to discover other things. So once we enable the, sorry, I was thinking about other things. Yeah, so we have the provided SDK languages in things like Python, Java, and JavaScript, and many other. So the steps typically are run on install or MCP server from the tool or data source that you care. In this case, Anthropic has open source repo for pre-built servers for popular systems. We talked about that. We have Slack, Git, databases, Google Drives, Publisher, blah, blah, blah. Then once we install the MCP server for the tool, we set up that in the client for our AI app. So we can use Clouds app, but we can also use many others. Remember, this is model agnostic. So once we enable that in the servers, uh, the client will pick on the additional functionalities provided. And then we need to invoke and iterate. So the model can now connect through MCP tool action as needed and make sure to monitor the logs for calling the servers correctly. So that's the main thing here. And we have even a video on how using Tesla through model content protocol before MCPs. However, okay, we can skip that. If MCP is super brutal, so opinions, and let's talk about maturely. Let's break MCP apart. But I think that that's an interesting discussion. But for the moment, let's just focus on understanding it, trying to implement one, and let's keep our hands busy in other things for the moment. New possibilities unlocked. This is important because we have multi-step cross-system validation workflow using agentic systems offered to coordinate many platforms. We can have also agents that understand an environment, and this is important because this also includes robotics. There is one company which is called oh my god, I forgot. Let me really quick check that because I think they are just awesome. Um, I had a link here around. I shared it with a friend recently. Hmm. It's called Physical Intelligence. Physical Intelligence, it's a company that's bringing general purpose AI into the world, into the physical world. So they have something that it's visual language. What was the A for? I cannot remember the name. Visual language what? Yeah, visual language action. So they basically a company that if you take a look to the video and then the sound doesn't matter, but they take this into spaces that are not known and make them possible to interact with the world to the world in real scenarios, like in your home, in Airbnb, or in a hotel room or things, and you just basically give instructions with your voice to the robots. And I just think that's amazing. So, shout out to the people of physical intelligence. Let me see if you have any questions. Does LangChange implement MCP? Of course they do, actually. Well, we can take a dive into LangChange. So, for example, they even have a page for this. LangChain changelog. Take a look. March 1, 2025. MCP adapters for LangChain and LangGraph. The LangChain MCP adapter is a package that makes it easier to use Anthropic Model Context Protocol MCP tools with LangChain and LangGraph. It converts MCP tool into LangChain and LangGraph compatible tools, enables interaction with tools across multiple MCP servers, seamlessly integrate hundreds of tool servers already published into LangGraph agents. Why use MCP adapters? These adapters will make it simpler to connect to LangChain and LangGraph with a growing ecosystem of MCP tool. So, yeah, and there is the JS package for that. Well, of course, this is Anthropic Model Context Protocol, but remember, it's open source, so it's from them, but also it's from all of us, right? So I don't know. I'm not so pro Anthropic branding here, but hey, thanks Anthropic for giving the time to develop that. Uh, yeah, if we go to the repo they have on their servers, I'm really sure we can find also the chain. I'm trying to armor crypto blockchain block bankless the blockchain block to more chain to blockchain a lot of blockchain. Edelman, Ergo, Goat, Heuristic, Mage, iFly, Pioneer, Solana. Oh, look, Solana, Agent Kit. Well, yeah, you saw the launching page for that. Uh, Aldo. Yeah, well, I try, but I mean, there is the confirmation from their page directly. ML Lam, okay. Well, um, poor robot made out state art mechanics and technology, and the first thing someone asks is to do the dishes. Yeah, it's like that Rick and Morty joke. Of the robot Rick created, like, oh, I can think, I can feel, I can see the world, I can perceive it around me. What's my purpose? Like, pass the salt or pass the butter. And he's like, okay, then here it's the butter, but or the salt, I don't know. What then? Wait until I give you the next instruction for pass me the butter. We will use any apps today. Um, Well, I'm not sure if we can classify this as an API, but I will say I do think it is because it's how we connect two pieces of software. So, yes, we are going to. Does lang change? Okay, I already answered this. Thank you for the questions. Great questions here. So, let's continue. Okay, I think we already discovered all these collaborating agents and concluding thoughts. So, great resources to have and other great posts. Remember, these all the links from here are on the slides. You can check them out later. So, anatomy of our MCP. Let's start breaking them down. So, we have a version, a session, we have messages, and we have metadata, or we can even have tools. Each messages also carries another metadata, like example, timestamps and source documents. Um, a pro tip, which actually we need to start doing right now, it's checking the documentation. This is the documentation provided for MCP's Model Control protocol.io/introduction, and let's start breaking down all of this. And this is where it starts getting a little bit more complicated, I have to admit it, but also very interesting. So the introduction says MCP is an open protocol that standardizes how applications provide context to LLMs. By far, I think we already understand that part. Think of MCP being like an USB-C port for AI application, just as USB provides a standard ways to connect your device to various peripheral accessories. MCP provides a standardized way to connect AI models to different data sources and AI tools. Far we understand that, right? I think this was extra simple understanding, with an extra simple, um, how to say that, explanation for people that actually don't need that, because no regular people are going to think about this protocol, right? The end user don't care about if we standardize as developers, as hackers, the way how we use these tools. So, well, great effort, but this I just think it's an overkill. So why MCP? Again, we already understand this, because it helps you to build agents with complex workflows. LLMs frequently need to connect with data and tools and other things, not only being isolated. We get it, that right. So let's continue to the architecture, which it's great. For example, at its core, an MCP floats client-server architecture where host application can connect to multiple servers looks like this. So we have the host MCP client, for example, the model, cloud, and IDE, in our case, Visual Studio, or if anyone uses Cursor, a tool, and the client in general terms. So we have the protocol, the MCP cloud protocol connecting to an MCP server, and that MCP server, it's imagine, for example, I've done this before in other cases. If in IoT, I have a different protocol to connect to the boards, to the devices. I can do it with REST, but that's not the most efficient way to do. So I connect them via MQTT, which needs a broker, and the broker also connects to a server. So I have many layers of extraction before I can connect to the end user, in this case, the client. So the MCP server has a protocol, in this case, MCP protocol, and they specify this here to connect to the AI client. Um, and it has another, we don't know what, protocol to get the local source data in a specific, that this is in general terms, for example, for A and B, and in a specific, very specific example, we can get a web API to connect to the server C and a remote other server C. And this remote server can also go to local data, or can connect, for example, this other case, to the devices using MQTT protocol, and get the information for temperature in a room, or I don't know, for humidity where they plant, I don't know, vegetables or something like that. These are crazy examples, but very, really interesting to think of. And imagine giving the ability to a artificial intelligence to interact with that way of the world. Well, you get this. Fascinating, isn't it? But yeah, we return to the joke, like, do the dishes, clean up my room. Uh, Hey, I see some more questions. Uh, 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 Thank you. Can you also tell which topics we need to know for AI engineer roles? For software engineer role, we know which needs for Java, C Sharp, etc. But for AI engineering, it's unclear. Here, I want to talk direct. I don't know. I have to admit, I have seen many posts in LinkedIn, and there is a big discussion about this specifically. For example, for the robotics, because there was a post about a guy, I cannot remember the name, saying like, "Hey, robotics engineers, like, oh, I applied AI to, for example, predict a dynamic system. Maybe now I am AI engineer, and I don't know. I just think saying like that directly won't become or won't make you an AI engineer. But then what an AI engineer is for me, and I have thought this very, very deep, uh, an AI engineer is just a software engineer with a applied that has applied a knowledge in a specific field. So I'm not sure. I will say it depends on the market. And remember, markets and the companies will start trying to get roles or trying to push for roles that are invented, like all the roles, right? Um, it's not as simple for saying, for example, like, oh, I'm an accountant. What's the role of your position? Well, accountant. You can invent something like, oh, I'm a division management of resources, blah blah blah, but at the end you're an accountant. um, it's like saying I'm a doctor. You have a major, you have to specify, you have to be a specialist in something. So you're a medic, I don't know, for the heart. You're a cardiologist, right? That makes sense. For us as engineers, you can say I can work with AI. At the end, I need to know a lot of things, not only for working with AI, but for working with the software as deployment. I need to know a little about architecture, DevOps, algorithms. I need to know and all of stuff. So at the end, you can call me an AI engineer, but I'm still a software engineer. For me, it is really important to have that in mind because I'm a mechatronics engineer, which means I have preparation in four engineering fields: software, control systems, mechanics, and electronics. So if I end up working, for example, right now, which I'm working in a startup, and my role says front end engineer, but at the end, I am doing way much more things like that. What I put in my CV, what I put in my LinkedIn profile, what am I, right? Call me whatever you want. I don't care. I'm a full stack, I'm a front end, I'm a AI, I'm a whatever. At the end, I do mechatronics engineering. And that's it for me. If you're studying a major at university, just put your title there. Don't worry. You can do and you can know and do many much more things like a title can encapsulate. And that's my opinion on that. Hey, yeah, my friend will showcase basic MC. My friend will you showcase basic MCP software. Yeah, actually, I was planning on that. We'll get to that, but don't worry. uh, there was the MCP blog from Hugging Face. Could you share it? Yes. Remember, all the links are on the slides, but I have the link here, so no worries. I can share it. Here's the link for it: huggingface.com/blog, and the author and then the title of the blog. Great said Alberto. Yeah, don't worry. Thank you. Um, I think the best language will be Python because every new major development comes to Python first. Yeah, I mean, again, strong opinion here, but I do think that knowing how to program it's not the same as knowing a programming language. Programming language, it's knowing the syntax, it's knowing how internally it works, the difference between if it is compiled, if it is interpreted, if it has a um, way to run a multi-thread or a single thread, if it is asynchronous, if it is a lot of things. But that's not knowing how to program. Now, how to program, it's get your thoughts, your mental process into giving instructions to the computer. So having a logic way of thinking, that's how knowing how to program. Then you can find more about the syntax of a language. Then you can know how to optimize it. You can easily how to say that. Oh, I think I lost connection. Yeah, easily leap between programming languages. Yeah. Okay, let's keep. Okay, this is added to stage. We can continue now. Message types, we can skip this for a second. Tools, function call, okay. Message types, just mention the MCP defines the structure, the manage role, the system users and tool assistants. All of this, it's in the introduction, so we will skip this. And for the question about if we were going to showcase the basic MCP software connection, the answer is yes. We're going to do that the fastest way possible, which is using GitHub Copilot. So we all have, because in the melee hacking we have been having pushing to get you all use Copilot, because we do think it's a great tool. I do think that I love it. I have been using it since the beta release. I was a test user, and now I just simply love Copilot. And now Copilot has the integration for used agents, MCP agents, which is super powerful. Let's move to that. Oh, well, no, before moving to that, sorry, I just wanted to give you this spoiler because you were anxious to know what we were going to do for practical. But before we move to the practical and before we actually put our hands on connecting the Copilot to a server, to agent and doing things like that, we need to finish the introduction, at least from the Model Context Protocol AI. So we take a look to this. We understand that how the host MCP client works, using the protocol to connect to the server, and then the server can do many other things to connect to the resources, being that a data structure, a database, other APIs for services in internet or whatever, right? An explanation of that is that the MCP host, it's the program that wanted to access to the data through the MCP protocol. The client, it's the client that maintains one-to-one connection with the server. So here we have the server. It's the lightweight program that exposes the specific capabilities to understand through the standardized model context protocol. The data source is, we mentioned, whatever database or even the remote, for example, here server, way to access that. And a quick start for served clients, served developers, and some examples. Let's open these examples: servers, clients, the building tutorial, and also the quick start for served developers and served clients. All of these are really important. We will end up with the building MCP at the end. We will start checking out the example of servers, the example of clients, then the quick start for developers. Sorry, first the quick starts, and let's start with the clients, then we can pass to the servers. So for clients, get start building your home client that integrate with all MCP servers, blah, blah, blah. We can define our language. In this case, it could be Python or JavaScript via Node. Let's keep with Python because I think many of you have already talked about how Python is very important. I really prefer JavaScript, but that's my personal opinion. And I understand that Python is a more common language or common thing to have in mind here. So in this tutorial, we'll show how to build an LLM-powered chatbot client that connects to MCP server, blah, blah, blah. The system requirements, Mac or Windows, latest Python, latest version of UB install. First, create a part of project, and we have to have install Anthropic and python.env. Then we can create this. We create our env example. We have our Anthropic key. Probably this is going to be using cloud. And then we create the client. The part here when we put attention is for import async AO. You use the optional async exit stack, MCP import client session, studio server parameters, and studio client. We import also Anthropic and load.emp. Load our environmentals, and the thing with the client it's being defined as a class. We create a session. We do that in an async way, and we use Anthropic. Then we serve our connection management, and for that we create the MCP server, which, give me a second, I'm trying to understand what this is doing. Oh, also I need a quick pause. I have more questions. Give me a second. I will grab some water because now my throat is itching, but I'll be back. Give me a second. Hey, now I'm back. Sorry. Um, I prefer JS2. I love it. You're one of mine. Question. You said we will integrate MCP with Copilot. Does it not use MCP natively? Um, yes. Remember, MCP is a protocol, so we are not like that, just like that. We're not actually adding or making a contribution to the Copilot code to use MCP. What we are going to do is I'm going to show you how to set up the already existing MCP connection of Copilot to use some of the existing MCP servers. So we have our MCP client and host, which is Copilot. The MCP protocol already is prepared, and we are going to connect it to an MCP server, right? Does that clarify? Okay, got it. Thanks. Yeah, perfect. Also, thanks for being so active here in comments, Flying Girl. So, let's continue with this example. And you can imagine this, for example, it's the same as it's happening in the compiled one. Um, I don't know if it is written in JavaScript or in Python or in Java or in C. Probably it's in C, I have to admit. But the idea is that the servant script part, we make connection like this, we create the client like this, and we serve it to being able to access with clients and servers like this. So this is just examples on how we create that, and it's passing a lot of information, so we are going to break it down just as the titles for the explanations. This is the basic client structure. Then we have a server connection. We will implement a method to connect to the MCP server, and that looks like this. Then we process the logic. Now let's add a core functionality to process queries and handling the tool calls. For that, we set the messages, the responsibles, and we get a list of the available tools. Then initial cloud API call. Remember, we can change cloud for any model that you may want. This is just because they created cloud and they have to promote it, of course. Then we have the chat interface, but we can substitute this for whatever we want. We can have this chat interface separately and then just serve this as a microservice or something like that, and then consume it and post it. I don't know, for example, for a piece of software that generates emails or messages or WhatsApp messages or I don't know, with whatever other thing we want to do. The main entry point, it's like now we are serving these uh, as the server, and you can find the complete client.py here. Then key components explain, client initialization, the MCP client class initialized with session management and API clients. Uses async exec stack for prepared for resource management, and it configures the Anthropic client for cloud interactions. This can be changed, remember that. The server connection, it supports both Python and Node.js servers, and it validates the script type, setups proper communication challenge, and initializes the session and lists the tools available. Then we make the query processing, the interact service, and resource management to finally expose it to a UI, right? We can find this and test it if you doing this serving, and the server development, it's very similar. We start building our own server to use in cloud desktop and other clients. So in this case, we are exposing the frontend, and in this case, we are fitting the content with any information we might want to fit. So we use this MCP server, for example, to sorry. I needed to give it a break to my head. To connect to the rack system we have created before, right? And that's it. So core MCP concepts, resource, tools, and prompts, we already checked that. I think we are ready now to close all of this. The example clients, well, at your time, just give it a moment. For example, if we take a look to Copilot, for example, yeah, perfect. It has support to resource, tools, and what else? No others. There's another one, Postman, for example. Tome app. Have you heard of this? This is great. But hey, Warp the terminal. Microsoft Copilot Studio. No. JetBrains AI Assistant. Cursor Klein. Klein, if you haven't heard of it, we also use it. Well, we use a fork in the middle hacking, which is root. But yeah, some example servers: Puppeteer, Slack, Google Maps, GitHub, GitLab, Sentry, Git, Postgres, SQLite, Google Drive, file systems, memory, AWS, Everart, a lot of them, right? So, great. Let's now move to the Copilot guide. Oh, I have more questions. It's been an hour. Thank you. Yeah, start loving sometimes something, and then you find it's built in C++, instead red flag. Just joking. Instant red flag. Yeah. Actually, for example, well, I think the major part of most of the things in JavaScript are written in C, but VS Code it's almost written in JavaScript using Electron, right? So that's why it's so slow. Joking. Uh, there's another language which is Lua, which it's really fast. and it's not that complicated as C, but it's very powerful as C. And I think the community of Beam, it's implementing a lot of development on it. Yeah. So let's return to the slides and let's start integrating that with GitHub. So the GitHub has a blog, GitHub Copilot. Use GitHub Copilot coding agent. Extend Copilot coding agent with the model context protocol. Learn how to use the MCP to extend capabilities of Copilot coding agent. So the model context protocol is an open standard that defines how applications share context. Okay, we really understand that we can pass staying safe, about setting up MCP servers in a repository. This is what we wanted. As a repository administrator, you can configure MCP servers for use within your repository. This is done via JSON format configuration that specifies the details of MCP servers you want to use. You enter the JSON configuration directly on the settings on the repository on github.com. Once MCP servers are configured for use within the repository, the tools specified in the configuration will be available to compile the coding agent on each assigned task. So, creating your JSON MCP configuration. You configure MCP servers using a special JSON format. The JSON must contain an MCP servers object where the key is the name of the MCP server, for example, playwright, and the value is an object with the configuration for that MCP server. So the MCP servers, MCP server 1 or 2, common arguments, blah, 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 right? The configuration object can contain following keys: command, arguments, tools, types, and amps. So these are some example configurations. The Sentry, the Playwright server, the Notion, and the Azure, and there are more. We're using your MCP configurations, adding your configurations repository. Let's take a look to this Notion one, right? I think from all these tools, it's the one which I relate more. If you copy and paste this example, you will need to remove the comments prefixed with which are not valid JSON. Of course, we can use this Notion key environment variable, which is passed to the server because of the end value below. The value of Copilot MCP Notion key will be passed to the server as an environment variable called Notion API key. Nice. Let's take a look at Notion MCP server. This project implements an MCP server from Notion API. So here, for example, we can check out, I'll create a Today Tokyo. Okay, let's wait again for the animation to refresh. Here, MCP JSON, research today trip into Tokyo and add a plan to something in Notion. I have to admit, the only reason why I don't love Notion, it's that it's not Markdown. Yes, installing the integration in Notion, Notion integration, and they tell you how to do all of that. But hey, you as me don't care that much about Notion, or you don't even use it. Well, good news, there is a servers repo here on the model control protocol page on GitHub. It says model control protocol servers. The repository is a collection of reference implementations for the MCP, as well as reference to the community built-in servers and additional resources. Reference servers. The servers aim to demonstrate MCP features and the TypeScript and Python SDK. Everything reference test server with prompts, resource, and tools Fetch the content fetching from the conversation from efficient LLM usage, file system, Git, memory, sequential timing, and time. Archive. The following references now as archive can be found at service archive. Slack, Sentry, Redis, Puppeteer, GitHub, blah blah blah. Then third-party services. Official integrations are maintained by companies building production ready MCP servers for their platforms. 21st Dev Magic, Create, Craft UI, I don't know this. Action Kit by Paragon, I don't know this either. Arfin, Agent QL, even Alliator, Agula, Alibaba Cloud Analytic DB for MySQL, Alibaba, Astra, Atlant, OutZero, which is great. AWS, Axiom, Azure, Bankless and Change, Box, Building, Cartera, Cheek, Chroma, embeddings, vector search, document storage, and full text with an open source AI application database. Circle AI CI, ooh, nice to have you here. Cloudflare, deploy, configure, and interrogate your resource on the Cloudflare development platform. Interesting. Convex, Dart, Data Hub, DeepL. Oh, this is one or two I just love a lot. Um, Defang, also interesting. Dumpling, the Elasticsearch, Exa, Fix, Firecrawl, Firely, Flora, GitHub's official MCP server. I'll open that separately. HubSpot, oh, really interesting too. Hyperbrowser, Hyperbrowser. JetBrains, Uflog, Kagin, Lambda, Windows, Discovery, Mercado Pago, interesting. Microsoft, MongoDB. This was one I wanted to check also. Let's take a look to this. MongoDB MCP server, a more counterpractical server for interacting with MongoDB databases and MongoDB Atlas. Table and contents, prerequisites, setup, quick start. So let's start checking. Prerequisites have node install, a MongoDB connection string or Atlas API credentials. Quick setup, option 1, you can pass connection with strings R's. Note: the configuration file syntax can be different across clients. Please refer to the following list to delete the expected syntax. Cursor, Cloud Desktop, Visual Studio Code. Use MCP servers in Visual Studio. Okay. Let's return to the GitHub one. And let's see. Okay. To the Copilot. Any questions this far? Yes, I can relate what you mean. I have to do select, right click, and bold just to make things bold. Yes, I mean, sorry, I was thinking of another thing, but yeah, I do agree a lot with you. Add Azure logging step into Copilot steps. Oh no, yeah, reducing configuration, adding configuration to a repository. Repositories administrator can configure MCP servers by following these steps. On GitHub, navigate to the main page of the repository. There's the settings. Under settings, in the code automation, select of the sidebar, click Copilot, then Copilot Agent. Add your configuration in the MCP configuration section. Click Save. If your MCP server requires a key or secret, okay, setting up Copilot in a Copilot environment. Once you have it, you validate, customate the built-in best practices. Extending Copilot chat. MCP support is currently in public preview and subject to change. MCP support is available in Copilot chat for Visual Studio. The GitHub pre-release license apply terms. Configure MCP servers in Visual Studio Code. So to configure MCP servers in Visual Studio Code, you need to create a .vscode/MCP JSON file. Let's do that. Oh, I have it here. Sorry. New folder. New file. And your personal instance of VS Code, you will be the only person who has access to the configure MCP servers to do this. At the configuration, okay, so we have the both options. We can do this on a specific repository, or you can add this personal on the general settings for Visual Studio. Recommend using only one location per server. Okay, yeah, fine. The steps below show how to configure the Fetch MCP server on your Visual Studio MCP JSON file. The Fetch MCP server is a simple MCP that provides web content fetching capabilities. For more information on the Fetch MCP server, see the Fetch directory. Yeah, actually, the Fetch directory probably it's the same as the one we have here on servers for sure. Fetch, and let's make sure about that. Fetch servers fetch, and this one here, yeah, they are the same, so we can close them both. You can use the same steps to configure MCP servers in your personal VS Code settings. I'm reading. Give me a second. Okay, yeah. Details on how to configure MCP. Okay, yeah. For information, I'm configuring the GitHub MCP server using the GitHub MCP server, and add the following configuration to this. We will do that. So the input sections defines the input required for the MCP server configuration. Type prompt string, servers. We're going to give the fetch command. Save the .vs code file, and a start button will appear. Yep, it's saved and start. It's set now. At the top file of the list server, click the Start button to start the MCP servers. This will trigger the input dialog and discover the server tools, which are stored in later sessions. So we're doing that. And then open Copilot Chat by clicking the chat icon on the Visual Studio Code. And in the Copilot Chat agent, select the Agent for menu. Oh, it has an error. The command needs to run fetch. What not found. Let's install that. Installation methods. Use currently download scripts. So let's copy this. We're downloaded it. And we rely on internet now. So I will try to make this quick. Okay. Is that big enough? I hope. It will be interesting to set up an MCP server for local LLM, right? Yes. That's a heavy duty. I will say that's why I didn't plan for it. But hey, great suggestion for a future project. So now let's run it again. Okay, it's running. Perfect. I think it says top of the files, click start. This will trigger the input dialog and discover the server's tool, which are then stored in the later sessions. Then open Copilot chat. Then we can check for agent. We have CloudSonnet 4. And in the Copilot chat, select agent. Okay, the view. To view your list of available MCP servers, click the tools icon in the top left corner chat. Oh. No. Top left corner chat. This will open the MCP servers list where you can see all the MCP servers and associated tools. Okay, let's test it since we cannot try it then. Okay, it's fetching it and it's supposed to input. Note that MCP servers or malicious conversations contained. Okay, perfect. It warned us, so it's using the MCP server fetch. Yeah, perfect. We managed to do it. Oh yes, I see here the MCP fetch. It's being used. So I think that's perfect. Okay, Copilot will fetch this exceptionally using existing MCP configuration and creating a new MCP server. Okay, that's perfect. We managed to do it for the fetch server. Perfect. Then I want to know, you have any question? Please ask anything about if you didn't understand where the model context protocol is, why it was important, how it is structured, what role it accomplishes, any question on the implementation, any question of the use cases, or any question of the adopting, please let me know. At the end, I just want to say thank you. The slides and the configuration can be found here on the repository, and I'm going to share with you. The part 2 will include more information on specifically how we can create this client in a local way. Really simple, don't worry about it. and how we can connect to an existing server like the Mongo one. Please share love and give us your feedback if you like it, if you didn't like it. That will be all. And that's it. Thank you so much for joining. Stay tuned for the part two. You have any question or anything before we wrap up this session? And I will wait for you for part two. Great, says Flying Girl. Well, again, if you don't have questions right now, don't worry. You can always reach me in the Discord server. And, well, of course, the what I was going to say. Yeah, the recording, if you missed any part or you missed any of the previous streams I was talking about how to set up your local long language model or how do you create your retrieval augmented generation systems, you can find also that in Global Hack Week page, which is ghw.mlh.io. And it was my pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much, and I will see you in part two. Bye.